All right.
Telling you, man, those bitches ain't shit. What?
Yeah, if you
No.
keep jerking off that hard, your arms are gonna fall off.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my co-host, Brook Potter, and this is the 10K Rum Podcast. How's it going, Brook?
Happy Defenders of the Fatherland Day, Amos. I'm sure you and your American cohorts don't know what that is, but that's actually a celebration that's taking place today in much of what was the USSR about the founding of the Red Army back in 1918. So it's their Veterans Day in a capacity. So lots of nice girls around in their pum-pum shorts, celebrating the men in arms. Lots of vodka, bear wrestling, and all that good stuff. So hope you're celebrating today, my friend. How are you doing?
That was not planned, everybody. That came out of nowhere. I am doing well. A little bit tired, but definitely doing well. I didn't want to grace everyone with my glorious mane of hair, so I'm wearing the old school. I guess it's old school for us. It was one of the hats that I wore at the beginning of the show, the founding of the show, and I thought I'd grace everyone with its presence again. But otherwise, there's not much going on here. I think we're getting a little bit of spring. As weird as that sounds, I decided to go and get a car wash the other day, and lots of snow melting, but there's also a lot of slippery surfaces, which is pretty nice.
Did you wash your car in vain? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was more so so in Minnesota, it's important to keep your car clean. I think it's like usually once every couple weeks, especially during the winter because of snow. I mean, not snow, salt. Salt
okay.
that could hit the undercarriage of the vehicle if it sits too long. It starts to progress into like rusting and eating away the metal. So you keep it washed every so often. I mean, you got some people that figure ways around that. Like there was a car I used to own where the gentleman who owned it before me sprayed like a coating of rubber underneath that protected against the salt. But it's just good to like keep it clean, even if like maybe the body, as soon as I drive, it's going to get like dirty again because of all the the puddles and whatever. But it's good to like just get that washed off right away.
Cool, because the salt is from the roads, right? They put the salt on the roads, highways, and stuff like that. Okay.
Salt related like corrosion, like with brake lines, just things that are very exposed and prone to like that type of corrosion. That's a very common thing in Minnesota.
Sure. It makes sense. Well, yeah, definitely stay safe out there, man. It sounds like, it's a dangerous place. You're out there living on the edge, man.
Not really. It's just more so you have a lot of things to contend with, and yeah. So
when are you going to sort your hair out then?
The hair? Oh, we'll see. We're definitely not sorting the beard out. We're letting that grow as much as I can until I decide it's getting a little just weird. The hair, I'm just probably by the end of the week I'll get it chopped off.
Right. Sounds good.
There hasn't been much. We talked a little bit before the show. There hasn't been much going on this week, huh?
No. I mean, Trump has been winning, but that's old news. Our guy Boris out here. I mean, there is a little bit of a controversy around the BBC, which I think I touched on in the last show, where out here in the UK, we have a television license. Yep. It's about £175 a year.
Oh, wasn't he talking about removing that or like?
Yes. He was talking about decriminalizing it. And something that takes place out here, of course, a lot of people don't understand. You pay this TV license to watch any live TV, even if it's not the BBC.
It sounds like you guys are like dealing with a marijuana legalization problem. We're going to decriminalize this. It's like
exactly.
We're going to decriminalize a crime we made up that doesn't exist in a lot of the world.
Yeah, pretty much. It disproportionately affects the poor and the elderly out here in the UK. So a lot of the people who are actually going through the court system tend to be elderly men and mostly women. Actually, they tend to be more on their own because women tend to outlive their male counterparts. And these people are on a fixed income. They don't have 175 pounds to just dish out, sort of thing. So that they're in the process of considering decriminalizing it. I think our budget is this week. Boris is going to present the budget and, the usual changes to the tax code and whatever is going to take place. And that might be one of the proposals. And from what I hear, almost 200,000 people have not renewed their license in expectation that he's going to decriminalize it. Kind of like a fuck you to the to the administration before it takes place. But yeah, that's pretty exciting.
How do you guys not have a prison problem like we do?
We do have a prison problem. It's not the same in the sense, but we do have we have other issues. Our prisons are segregated into religious factions because there is the propensity for let's just say radicalization in certain prisons. So
you guys should have held on to Australia, man. You had your little penal colony.
Yeah, I don't think the Aussies would appreciate that too much, but we do have our fair share of problems out here, which is kind of why another policy is actually deportation. We are deporting a lot of people who've broken the law in violation of their immigration or their I guess application for asylum or immigration. And that's causing a lot of controversy because it's a lot of Jamaicans and West Indian people and all this other sorts of thing. But you've broken the law, that kind of forfeits your right. Brooke? No. I already have citizenship. I mean, this country, they could technically revoke it because I have dual citizenship. And it's illegal to make somebody stateless. But if I gave up my other passport, I probably they'd be hard pressed to deport me and get rid of me.
It's illegal to be stateless?
Yeah, it's illegal to make somebody stateless.
Oh, I was like, how can you be like in trouble for being illegally without a country?
Yeah, I mean, you remember that movie with what's his name? Oh God, the Forrest Gump guy. What's his name?
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. That's it. He actually did a movie about a man from Yugoslavia, I believe.
The Terminal.
And he was stuck
it wasn't Yugoslavia. It was like some fictional country called
right, but it was based on the collapse of Yugoslavia and
basically during his flight, his country's government basically was overthrown.
Yes.
Krakosia? Something. I remember what it was called. I really like that movie, actually.
It is, and it's based on a true story. There is a man that actually happened to.
Right, and then he had to just learn to survive in the airport terminal.
Yeah, he couldn't go anywhere, but that is technically illegal. You're not supposed to. Well, I mean, you can't help it if your government collapses. That's a different issue. But you can't, for instance, if I was only a British citizen, and in fact, this is a case that's going on right now. Yeah. We have an ISIS bride, so she was English. She went out to fight for ISIS, and, has her own stories. And they revoked her British citizenship because she happened to be also Pakistani citizen. But if she was not a Pakistani citizen, they would not be able to revoke her citizenship. And that's a bit of the debate that's going on right now. It's pretty messed up.
I remember watching a Vsauce video, and partway through, you remember how the old school Vsauce videos would go? They kind of just following that trail of breadcrumbs and learn a bunch of things you didn't think you wanted to learn. So there was a thing he mentioned about there's an estimation of just people in the world every day that literally just disappear.
Yes.
Whether someone files a missing persons report, no one ever finds that person again. And he was saying it was like a few, it was like a decent number. It wasn't one person, but it was like a good amount of people every day just kind of just disappear. Yeah. And you think about that, and it's whether it's, they, through some covert means have most of their identity deleted from databases, or they disappear, or, they Yeah, and then of course there's so many other funny statistics like only half of eligible taxpayers file their taxes every year.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, only half of Americans that can that are capable, like have money reported and they can do all the tax returns. Only half of them ever do it every year.
I'm not entirely surprised by that, as you all have a very large service industry out there. There's probably a lot of cash, so roofing and maintenance and painters and all that kind of stuff. They're running on a cash economy. They don't really have to, report. Well, they should. We're not encouraging anybody to break the law.
As someone who's like kind of get, I definitely have, I've told, I don't know if I've mentioned the show, but I do have family members that are in the accounting business, and it does get mentioned from time to time, kind of like, you got to do it. You got to, file your paperwork. You got to do this every year, do everything proper. And I'm like, half of the country doesn't even do this.
Probably.
Not that I'm advocating anyone go do anything stupid, but as a libertarian, you definitely just get those little thoughts kind of go. I don't have to.
I think there was some conspiracy video that I watched where there is actually no law that says you have to pay taxes. It's a convention.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true or not.
There's interpretations of amendments and laws that basically can lead you to that, but
there isn't actually a statute, is what they're kind of saying.
It's not so clearly defined that you can prove it per se. I mean, there are individuals I've heard of that will write the IRS every year.
Yeah.
With a very clear and concise way. And most of the time, the IRS is so damn busy, they don't care.
Yeah, of course.
But then they arrest those people like after a few years of noticing that. They basically go, oh. Because to my understanding, they have obviously a database of just about every person that lives in the U.S. And over time, you get like little warnings that pop up. So once you're part of a group that misses your tax return, well, if you miss 1 year, that's a lot of people.
Sure.
But the more years you're missing, I bet they like move you to different lists. And then once you're short enough list and the resources are there, they're going to pursue you.
Yeah, probably.
So that's what happens with these people is, they're making their case and they think the IRS comes after them. But really, it's just you're not on the right list yet.
Yeah, it is a lot of manpower, hours, resources to go and investigate. 300 million people, and you say, let's say 80 million of that is actual taxpayers and whatever. That's a lot. That's a huge department in 50 different states. Of course, they're not going to go after everything. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So they really have to justify who they're going after, to their bosses to spend.
And every year, you always hear about the IRS being short-staffed.
Oh, well, have you ever heard of a government department that's fully staffed?
I don't know, maybe the presidency. Just one guy.
Yeah, but not the White House. The White House is the department. They always need more staff.
I think the executive branch has almost... It's either a few 100,000 or almost a couple million people employed.
I don't think it's a million, but it's definitely up there. I think 100,000 is probably about right just for the White House.
It's so ridiculous. Well, I was saying executive branch.
Well, right. That would basically be considered the White House budget. And I think last time I heard it was something like $5 billion a year just for the White House budget. That includes all the security, all of, probably secret weaponry that comes out and like shoots down UFOs or whatever, just like all of the crazy sci-fi stuff, plus all the staffing, catering, the events, all of that. It's about $5 billion a year, and it's all under one.
The gold plating maintenance.
Yes. Well, Trump does like a gold toilet. He does. If ever you've seen the pictures of his apartment in Trump Tower, he does actually have a golden throne.
I've never. Why would you? Man.
Yeah, there's no accounting for taste. He's got a lot of money, but he likes some pretty gaudy statements.
What was it? This comedian I heard that said Trump is like a poor person got rich.
Yeah. No accounting for class, and Yeah, that kind of thing.
I want names across all the buildings I own.
Well, there's actually a story behind that. His first building, Trump Tower, and the whole reason he's famous. I mean, there are tons of developers.
We've talked about the branding thing. I know that.
Yeah, so he actually was going to call it the Tiffany Tower. And he was talking to another developer and he says, well, is your name Tiffany? And he's like, no. And that's when he decided to go with Trump. So there was actually a toss-up. I don't know what, maybe Tiffany might have been his daughter at the time. I can't exactly sure from his first marriage. But he went with Trump and, he became a shameless self-promoter. And again, what made him famous is he did the world's biggest no money down deal to acquire the land to build Trump Tower. It was basically a handshake deal with the promise of financing later on. That's what made him famous. He acquired the rights to build the land and the approvals, no money down. So he didn't buy the land outright first. It was basically a napkin agreement. And he bluffed. He bluffed completely. He just played the poker game and he managed to pull it off. That is what made Trump, in the development world, what made him famous.
Do you ever hear about, I found this weird video, a conspiracy theory connecting Nikola Tesla and Donald Trump?
That's a stretch. No, I've never heard of that one.
It was regarding where at some point, Nikola Tesla's inventions and a lot of the technology he was developing was confiscated by the government.
Okay.
So a lot of people know about that, and they know, sort of the travesty of Tesla versus Edison, stuff like that.
Yes.
And this funny video, I was like, what? And they said, okay, so the government confiscated him, but then the department that was in charge of, going through and cataloging and taking care of Tesla's stuff was Donald Trump's uncle.
Ah, okay, interesting. So his dad's brother, interesting.
Yeah,
or his mom's brother, one of the, I suppose.
One of them. I didn't. Again, don't quote me on this, guys. This is not I saw the video and I was like, okay, I didn't even confirm it yet. I just thought it was interesting. And then so the video is claiming so he was part of this group, but then the government decided to release a lot of these whatever devices Tesla developed to the Trump family. And then Donald Trump had access to it once he was old enough to know what was going on. And here's where it got really funny. So Nikola Tesla claimed to have developed a time machine.
Oh, interesting.
And so they said maybe Trump's family had access to the time machine to then learn how to win the 2016 presidency. I was like, what?
Maybe that's the same time machine that the folks over at The Simpsons are using to constantly predict what to put in the episodes.
Exactly.
I don't know how true any of that is. Trump's dad was a developer in New York before. In the state of New York, he wasn't in Manhattan. So it's not like he didn't have some exposures to that kind of thing. I think if you had access to really elite technology, you might be a little further along than where he's at. As billionaires go, he's only like $3 or $4 billion. He's not really, he's not really raking it in, like some of these guys.
I'd be more believing like a conspiracy theory about Bloomberg.
Yeah, Bloomberg is probably more feasible. I love the conspiracies. I love the Project Blue Book stuff. I love, a fiber optic technology was raided from the Area 51 crash. I love all that kind of stuff. We'll never really know.
Bloomberg is going to, the concern now is Bloomberg is going to buy the election.
But he's going to try.
Yeah. He's basically the Trump of the left now. But what's funny is Trump used to be a Democrat and Bloomberg used to be a Republican. Yes,
that's pretty true. But Bloomberg is no Trump though. People don't like Bloomberg. People who like Trump really like Trump. Like you go to a
I will
rally.
say, I mean, did you see the clips where Bloomberg pretty much like had a couple of good burns in on Bernie?
No, I know I did not watch the debate, but I've heard some clips from it. So do fill me in.
Oh, I mean, it was just everyone was ganging up on Bloomberg. Like, what you're not realizing is we have a billionaire trying to buy the election, and
Right.
Bloomberg kind of jumps in and saying like, here you're hearing these people kind of, kind of getting on this case, and he's like criticizing this radical notion of socialism that like Bernie really pushes, and he goes. And here you are, demonizing the rich, and they're like, oh, how did you earn your money? And he goes, I worked for it, which, for the most part, he did.
Yeah, it's true. No, he is what I would call a self-made person. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, most people want to go and demonize like billionaires because they think they never earned anything, and it's like, well, what happens is you come up with a really good idea or a few good ideas in your life. You make a lot of money on it. You have a couple of pretty, there's definitely a little bit of the, right place, right time kind of thing. But your ideas are rewarded properly, and you kind of, you definitely catch the right timing on things, and you get to, you get to a billion, and at that point, you have access to so much more that you can turn that billion into way more.
Yeah, I don't think you even have to make it as far as that. I think once you cross, I don't know, maybe 10 million US dollars, it's pretty easy to multiply that by a factor of like 30 or 40% a year if you're smart.
Yeah, but
I agree. I agree that but it's a good story, Bloomberg's story. I don't know it as well. I know the Bloomberg name from the financial markets and Bloomberg Information Television and the Bloomberg Terminal. So I have a lot of respect for him for that reason. Is he's built the modern trading world. Him and Reuters, Thomson Reuters, were kind of at competition on that whole market. But yeah, he revolutionized information, getting it to the traders as quickly as possible and laid the foundation for much of the news that we have today.
But yeah, so you have this, and anyway, so Sanders is trying to kind of demonize him and such, and then Bloomberg just owns up like, yeah, I've made myself. I've earned and worked hard for every dollar I have.
It's true.
And then he keeps going on about his socialism, and he goes, what you guys don't understand is the biggest socialist in the country owns 3 homes. How about you tell us about that, Bernie? Like, call them out. Because what's going on now is you have Bernie as sort of the radical, like Bernie and Warren are really towing that radical leftist sort of, left-leaning line.
Yeah,
and Bloomberg is becoming like the centrist candidate.
Right.
So,
is he though? I'm not sure.
He's trying to appeal to that. He's trying to appeal to kind of like a little bit of the everyman, the self-made billionaire, like work hard. I told you about the radio ads I was hearing about him. Michael Douglas has endorsed Bloomberg. I don't know if that means much, but okay.
Michael Douglas.
And yeah, I don't get why Tulsi. I like in terms of viability, in terms of candidates, I would like to see make it far. It sucks that Tulsi is pretty much the last one, and she's nowhere really to be found in the mainstream. They've kind of suppressed her. But you got Bernie, Warren, Amy Klobuchar. I don't even know why she's still trying.
Is Buttigieg?
Buttigieg. He's like kind of becoming a little bit of that dark horse in some context, but not enough to really take over and beat. And then there's Biden. Biden's just becoming senile, in my opinion.
He's going crazy before our very eyes.
He's going crazy. He's going crazier than Bernie, and Bernie's the crazy socialist.
Right.
And I was listening for the first time in a while. I listened to a few CNN clips of Bernie.
Ooh.
Not that I'm torturing myself. I just listened. I wanted to see kind of more recently where Bernie was on things. Bernie really sucks at answering questions.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not
People,
new.
well, yeah, politicians in general suck. But I mean, he really, just the way he answered it, like people want to say, oh, Bernie's been consistent for 40 years. Yeah. He also doesn't really address anything.
Yeah, it's talking
people
points.
Yeah, there's people that will go up there and really put him to the test. Like, I'm really surprised that they'll let people in there, like, really challenging him on questions. He just doesn't confront them directly.
Yeah.
So they go up there and go, well, I've got like you're talking about this healthcare, like, and health, universal health care, single payer, all this stuff. Like, am I gonna have to pay more taxes on this?
And he
Obviously,
kind of waffles.
And he kind of really like just rubs in and kind of really kind of works around his talking points. The top 10, top 1% of 1%, and they're not paying
millionaires
their
and
fair
billionaires.
Millionaire. Well, no, he doesn't even say millionaires anymore. Remember that he only says.
Oh yes, now
nowadays.
he's a millionaire, so they're off the shit list.
Like literally, pretty much all except maybe one of the candidates are all millionaires.
Right, one is a billionaire, but sure, yes.
All your presidential candidates are usually millionaires, and he's just going on about this, and no, it's actually going to be cheaper. You're not going to pay a single dollar, but it's going to be cheaper in the long run. And then they're like, and I was glad actually the moderator was like, but Senator Sanders, are the middle class going to pay more in taxes? Well, the simple answer is yes, but but the way his intonation, the way he's talking about it, the flow of his answer, you almost don't catch it.
Right, and it's so quick.
If you weren't really paying attention, which unfortunately most of the public doesn't really pay attention to things like that, but it's a lot of you see the waffling, the way the energy, the flowing of his words, the way it comes out. Your mind is just going to skip that.
Right.
All you're going to hear is the talking points. So I'm hearing this. I'm like, just answer the goddamn question. Are we going to pay more taxes? Yes. Okay. Like, I would actually like to see a candidate it wouldn't go far, but I mean, if you had a candidate that could like
honest?
Well, not even honest, but like would answer a question, like honest about the questions he's asked. Like he could still do what he's doing, but like he could actually answer questions properly, but in a way that people can understand why. Like the taxes are going to go up. Well, yeah, of course they are.
Of course they are.
When you want to fund a program like this, taxes do have to go up, and at least be honest about this. So you want to talk about it's not socialism; it's democratic socialism, which is just it's like, okay, what's the difference? Like, that's, even some of our more socialist friends that are supporting this guy are not really acknowledging. Oh no, it's not like socialism and all this stuff because it's them. I'm like, okay, how do you define socialism?
Mm-hmm.
The seizing of the means of production. Okay, so instead of it being enforced, you're voting for that to happen.
Yeah, instead of a dictator, you do it by democracy. What's the difference? They're both seized.
What is it? Yeah, and then you have this really good saying that is, the difference between democratic socialism and socialism is you're going to vote your way in and shoot your way out.
Yeah, pretty much. And what I don't like about a lot of these socialist advocates and stuff like that, they don't even know what these phrases mean. So exactly as you say, socialism has always been understood as the collective ownership of the means of production. So like a co-op is a very good example of socialism.
No, we're just giving it back to the people. Yeah.
Right. You're not even doing that because you're giving it to a representative of the people to run if you're handing it to the state. The state isn't the people.
You're not, the
state is against the
people. You're not turning like a large company of like 1 million employees into
owners.
Into like a democratized board, because then all your meetings you'll never get shit done.
Correct. It's not like you're giving ownership and shareholders to the employees. You're just handing it to the state and saying, well, now it's peopleized. It's democratized through this kind of method. That's not socialism. right? That is what they're calling socialism these days, but that's just
in the
national.
end. You still have representatives that are going to make decisions on your behalf, and they're going to be easier to control. Like, excuse me, I want to talk quickly, like, because so you hear a lot about these, like, democracy has its problems. Each of these, like, political systems have problems because when you have these sort of structures and bureaucratic, like, departments in place that are controlling most of the power, it gets to be, easily corrupted. And in those cases, if you ever want to make any real change, it has to be slow. I mean, you literally have to play the same game to get things done.
Agreed.
So I've talked to some people that have, talked about the different systems they like, and it's not. I'm not endorsing this at all. I know when we remember when we had our friend Jeff from Asian Capitalist. That he was kind of talking about sort of like this modern version of the monarchy.
Yes.
I forgot the formalism. Not that I'm advocating for it all, but there was someone made a really interesting point, and they said, like, they believe the best system was they called divine monarchy, but basically like the idea of like a God chosen king kind of thing. And I was like, and someone else was like, well, yeah, that'd be a better system because if there's ever corruption, you only have one guy to overthrow.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah. It was interesting because I'm like, because you see the system that we're in today, and I'm not advocating overthrowing anybody. I'm not advocating for violence of any sorts. But you think about sort of no, we can't say that word. But you hear you hear about how systems are just so layered with bureaucrats and just unelected officials. You have all these positions of power that are so out of control that if you take one out, so to speak, hypothetically, it wouldn't make much of a difference. Just because you become president doesn't mean you can really make any huge changes that make much of a difference. Trump's doing what he's doing, and a lot of people like what he does, but even with his best efforts, there's still so much in place that would kind of block that. So in the case where you would have essentially a monarch, if he fucks up, all right, someone's gonna, poison him, assassinate him or something. You just get another guy that you like.
Yeah, this is the Hoppian theory. I think it's Hans Hopp's Hoppe, or however
Hoppe.
German Hoppe. Yeah, he was the one who advocated for this because he also examined all the different types of democracy, and they all have flaws. But direct monarchy, so an appointed king with advisors, not really much of a parliament, is probably the best system to minimize the corruption. In a sense, if he starts fucking with the economy, he suffers just as quickly, right? Because if the economy is not doing well, he's not really getting the money directly, sort of thing. Not that it's not prone to problems in its own right, because if he starts losing his mind and starts making some fucking crazy decrees, or somebody kidnaps his wife or whatever, there are other problems that come with it. But for the issue that you're raising in terms of corruption, I haven't really looked into it. I know of the theory. I tend to agree with Jeff on a lot of that stuff, but at the same time, I'm not entirely. There is an upside to government corruption, which is less gets done. Now, yes, you have the problem of waste and other things, but I'm not entirely sure I want efficient government. It's kind of like the gridlock of government is sometimes a good thing because the shit doesn't really change.
Yeah. There's so much. It's like people want stuff done, and then but then they're also like the libertarians who are so very anti-government, at least anti-big government for the most part.
Sure.
And you kind of wonder like how like you can't have a perfect system.
There's no such thing. I'd agree.
Or even just and so your goals have to be evaluated. But here's another thing too: is I think is a reality that that a lot of people don't quite, specifically libertarians, don't quite understand. They advocate against big government and they want to shrink it because they want to have less waste, less chance of corruption. And then you got your types that are maybe more minarchist and even anarchist to some degree. And most of your libertarian types, I would say, typically would fit in, obviously not like, in terms of like intelligence, they're not stupid. They're not average necessarily, but they're just a little bit, like, I'd say just a hair above like being somewhat smart, that they're aware of like, okay, they're enough. They have awareness that they can kind of think about things like government, systems of power, taxes and stuff. So then they draw conclusions from that. I think once you reach a certain point, you can draw conclusions both in the more pro-libertarian side or maybe some other view. But one thing they tend to forget, I think, is there are other people that exist too.
Yes.
That aren't that smart.
Yes.
That tend to govern most of what happens every day. Whether it's that they pay most of the taxes, they're consuming most of the resources, they're taking up most of the space. I'm not talking about I'm not trying to dehumanize these people, like, they're taking up space and eating all the food. But you have people that exist in the world that basically, for the most part, just kind of go about their day. They're not really doing much, thinking much.
Sure.
Much of anything. They need government.
No, I agree.
And to just go and like, because we have a little bit of understanding and think, taxation is theft, government is force, and all these neat little catchphrases that definitely address good things. You still need something. And,
yeah, I don't think we're about to press the Rothbard button.
No, but I mean, but think of it this way: you have two things. So if we know the Pareto principle. You have 80. This is just in a purely objective sense. 80% of the population don't have enough awareness to make really any sound decisions that are sort of the greater good. They just make decisions based upon feelings, good campaigning. So if you want to say subliminal messaging, campaign.
I would say that's all politics, but yes.
So you have most
very few actually based on fact.
So you have this going on, and instead of the people that are basically can see, they're just a little bit aware enough, just a little bit smart enough to like think of like better solutions. They're the ones that aren't. Their votes aren't going to matter because it's going to be overwhelmed by the votes of people that just do it.
Sure. But I mean, that's always been politics. It's been the politics of fear.
Yeah. So like you kind of wonder. So you wonder like how do you balance that between?
You can't.
Yeah. Do you allow essentially some degree of democracy where everyone still has a say to a point, or do you have a system where the smartest or the strongest gets appointed to rule, or a group of them get appointed to rule? And you just, you hope they don't get too corrupt with power. And if they do, you kill them off, remove them, exile them, whatever you do.
You kill them off. All right, Chairman.
No.
Thank you for that.
No. But you know what I'm saying? That
I do. But you see, we've seen the best and the brightest do some major fuck ups when it comes to government policy. Like once upon a time, bloodletting was probably, the scientific consensus, right? Did you really want those people, to also carry the reins of power? Or, I mean, we've recently discovered that, the demonization of meat in the diet has been clearly overblown, for instance.
Yeah.
But the best and the brightest supposedly has, recommended that we don't eat as much meat so I don't, there is no easy answer to this question, because the best and the brightest have fucked up so many times, right?
So you think about it this way. So I'm just comparing it. And again, everyone, we're not taking a side one way or another. We're just kind of addressing these different ideas. In the idea of like a representative sort of Republican democracy that we have in the States,
a republic democracy,
yeah,
republic.
It starts really, really good. A lot of freedom, a lot of stuff going on. And, everyone gets to vote, electoral college. You have all these systems in place where everyone has a say. And for the most part, people are like doing pretty well. But because you've opened up the voting and the decision making to, granted, with the system, how voting has changed over the years, the more that they have started to include more people, and I'm not talking any specifics. I'm not saying I'm not advocating specific people groups that can't vote or shouldn't vote. From the beginning of landowners to now, where basically anyone with citizenship, residence, depending on who you talk to, can pretty much just vote. But the more and more that you've included more and more people to voting, you've seen, some people might say, a bit of a decline in a lot of things. Taxes are so overblown to the point that, the revolution was fought because of a 3% tax.
Yeah.
How much does anyone get taxed? Even the poorest people in the States, way more than that. You look at the changes in just, constitutional rights, whether it's First or Second Amendment or just any other amendment. Most amendments, you hear most about the First and Second Amendment, but for the most part, the Bill of Rights, the 10 amendments have all been definitely violated in some way. Some maybe not so much. I don't get knocks at the door so soldiers can stay in my apartment. But there are ways that the system has definitely been corrupted. So do you have a system that starts good and becomes basically stagnant and corrupted over time to the point that the rights that the system was founded upon are basically slowly eroding? So it's like a slow progression versus if you had the concept of like a monarchy, you would just have really, really crazy ups and downs. You would basically have a really, really good period, and then once tyranny comes in, it can go absolutely shit. But, someone removes that guy, and you get another guy that, maybe does some good again. Possibly. Where the degrees of corruption are more...
responded to easier, I would say.
Responded to easier. Yes, they can go a lot quicker, and it's easier to identify when there's corruption, whereas now, sort of by way of compromise over time, if the founding fathers look at the country today, they'd be like, the fuck happened? How could you guys not see this? Well, because of how slow it progressed.
Correct. And this is how you wear down a mountain, so, you take something like, what is the classic separation of church and state amendment that they're claiming? Is it this, not the Second Amendment, or where government shall form no form of religion? That was to protect against the state power becoming a theocracy, right? You do not want a repeat of the Dark Ages with the Catholic Church, for instance. How does that go from keeping the state from monopolizing religion against its people and creating a theocracy to suddenly you're not allowed to pray in school? How does what is supposed to protect the people from the state now becomes the state intervening into the private lives of faith of individuals? And it happened because of the Supreme Court gradually shifting their position as to what was constituted as, the state.
How did once the right to bear arms turn into just basically the right to bear a gun?
Correct. It's the small erosion. So it starts off with, okay, let's just say there's an amendment saying you got to turn left. Just hypothetically, on the road you got to turn left, and then the Supreme Court says, well, no, this, they really meant it in the sense that it meant any kind of turning left or right. And then somebody else comes across and says, well, no, what they really meant was that you can't turn right. So even though the wording says don't turn left, through interpretation in the courts over time and stuff like that, you can get a complete opposite meaning to what the original founders intend. And that's the battle that you'll have going on in the US between those who call it a living constitution which the progressives tend to believe that the founders did not mean it literally. It was supposed to be concepts that we can interpret into the future, versus the literalists that are basically saying, no, we have the discussions. You can look at the Federalist Papers and all of these different things to get an authentic definition for what's being said.
Yeah. Unwarranted search and seizure.
There you go.
Civil asset, civil asset forfeiture, right?
Yes. Yeah. Eminent domain.
Eminent domain was actually, I think, is a little more properly defined than civil asset forfeiture.
Okay.
So civil asset forfeiture is basically where a policeman, in some cases, not that people do this too often, money is easier to be transferred electronically rather than physically.
Sure.
But there have been cases definitely where, let's say a grandson trying to get an investment from like a grandfather.
Yes.
So the grandfather, instead of like writing a check or something, he maybe has some like secret stash of money in some safe somewhere. So he takes out, let's say, $100,000 in bills.
Yeah.
Well, so you kind of do the math and you kind of figure, and he gets it in a bag and then gives it to this grandson. The grandson puts it in the backseat of his car, driving it back to wherever he lives. That's fine. I mean, it's a little suspicious just based upon how police deal with it, but it's fine. Sure. So police pulls over the guy because, for whatever reason, maybe he
busted tail light.
Yeah. Policeman just looks in the back seat, sees a bag, and of course, then the citizen, not knowing his rights, just kind of lets the policeman look. The policeman looks, goes, "What's all this money?" Policeman, the cop can basically on the spot seize that money.
Right.
And the actual argument that I've heard, how they'll argue like keeping that money, is they basically can say, well, we think the money is. It's almost like they grant the money sentience to say the money is going to commit a crime.
Right. It's going to be used for some perpetration of crime.
Yeah. And we have to seize it.
Right.
And they don't have to give it back. So you have these like police departments that seize money, basically, from citizens. Sure. Anyone with just a substantial amount of money on their person, they can just seize it, use it to fund things. I think, I've heard the joke about some police department somewhere like seized a couple of margarita machines or something.
Right. That's pretty messed up. I mean, that's obviously on a state level. That's not a federal law though, because police tends to be local.
but it's prevalent across.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. So, but you don't hear about that because it's mainly you hear about First and Second Amendment violations. But yeah, you just this is unwarranted search and seizure. So
you need reasonable cause in order to do that. I think.
Yeah, the reasonable cause is you're walking around with too much money.
Yeah, and that's probably not. I think if they went to court, that's probably not going to be sufficient. Especially if in court they can prove, well, look, this is where the money came from. This is where it's going. Yeah, I understand the point you're making. It's.
But it happens more than enough that obviously those cases haven't been like.
It's not public.
They don't win typically.
Right.
So something's going on there. Some argument they're using. But yeah, I've heard of it. It's kind of like one of those John Stossel things you hear about, like that he's talked about, like, oh, here's a weird thing that your government does.
There's a lot of weird things that the government does. Why limit it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. I'll have to look into it. I know we have similar draconian laws out here in the UK. In fact, we actually just had a victory for free speech. I don't know if I touched on this or not, but I think he had some kind of dealings with law enforcement or something. Or he was a firefighter, and he made some comments that was rather disparaging to the transgender movement, including such things as liking a comment along the lines that, men aren't women sort of thing. I don't know the exact quote.
Absolute monster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally Hitler, absolutely. Absolutely. And he was investigated. The police actually showed up at his work to investigate his thought crime. And, he ended up in court, and he basically, these people were basically saying that this is a hate crime and this, that, and the other. And thankfully, the courts actually struck it down and be like, this is Orwellian. Nothing he said was directed to any one individual to make it a hate incident. And if it is that we're going to start judging the intent and thoughts of, other individuals, we have lost the ability to function as a free speech society and a free society. Something along the lines was the judge ruling. So thankfully, in a moment of clarity out here in the UK, it looks like the tide might be turning a little bit on these, online hate comments and, the crusade of the SJWs to try and squash out everybody that they don't like.
Right.
So yeah, because again, unlike you, we do not have a codified constitution.
Yeah.
Right. We do not have Amendment 1, 2, and 3. If you want to look at our constitution, you pull out a bunch of books, you pull out, a bunch of statutes, and you pull out, the Magna Carta and a whole bunch of ancient documents.
A big old plaque that says Parliament is sovereign.
Yeah, basically it kind of rules down to Parliament is sovereign, and no Parliament can bind a future Parliament in what they can do. So it's pretty messed up. It's pretty messed up, which is, we kind of need those reforms after we've seen how the government was able over the Brexit issue to try and overturn the will of people. I think now more than ever, there is a demanding for a codified constitution to say, look, if you're doing a referendum, this is how it's got to be.
It's funny because that's kind of the government that Thomas Jefferson was proposing.
Sure.
No people. So he said his idea was, why do we have the right to bind future generations in laws, yet we have no power of binding another people, like another nation?
Correct.
Basically pointing out like this, the breach of sovereignty between times, like different time periods, is the same as breaching the sovereignty of another nation.
Correct.
And I was like, okay. So then his proposal was, we should have had a constitutional convention every 20 years.
Yeah, to kind of rewrite or amend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine how fucked that'd be.
I was about to say, we basically, that's what we have here, except it's reviewed every 4 years or 5 years when we have an election, because they can basically write the laws as they see fit. And there are advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is we can do things pretty quickly out here. If we want to change something, we can do it pretty quick.
The disadvantage is freedoms, just like
that's the disadvantage. Disadvantage is there is no real legal protection from government power in any real sense. We're all serfs out here, and they can create any law that they want, and we don't really have any kind of protection. It's a trade-off. And I, for one, I would take a written constitution. I don't mind a slow government that's inefficient, that doesn't get as much done.
I mean, does it have to be written? Can it be typed?
Very droll there, Amos. Very droll.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. But that's all codified means. It means that it's put in one place. Right? Unlike us, we have it. It's written down. It's a bunch of laws.
It's just
common
put
law.
More than one place.
Yeah, it's not codified into one document. It is scattered across, 1,000 years of legal and political history.
Yeah, it's why National Treasure wouldn't have worked in the UK.
No,
they wouldn't know what to steal.
They'd have to steal the Magna Carta, and that's.
But it's like, I mean, what is such an important document that any founding individuals would like put it on somewhere? It's like in National Treasure, be like, oh, we got to steal the Magna Carta, and then we got to steal this other thing, and we got to steal this other thing, another thing. Whereas here, it's like, oh, we just steal that one document.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not even to say that there is only one copy of the Constitution. There are many copies of the Constitution. So, but yeah,
Right.
It works. It still works easier than trying to steal the Magna Carta.
Where is it, by the way?
I think we have it in the British Museum. There are multiple copies of the Magna Carta. So I think
the original one.
Here. The ones, I think it were a couple copies signed by King George, who signed it. There's definitely one in the British National Museum off Trafalgar Square. I don't know where else the other ones are. I think the universities might have a couple. Oxford,
can't steal
Cambridge. Well, I mean, anything is stealable with enough money and planning. Haven't you seen Ocean's 11?
That'd be because I think I told you like they're planning a third national treasure. It'd be interesting if they had to steal the Magna Carta.
And knowing how woke Hollywood has become, is probably going to be some kind of fucking international sort of thing, because America is not the center of the world sort of shit.
I mean, the Magna Carta,
it's going to be the Mona Lisa. It's going to be something.
If it's to tie into U.S. history, like the Magna Carta is tied to U.S. history in a way.
Sure. Most democracies around the world have their roots in the Magna Carta, which is basically stealing power from the king and letting the lords or the landowners start making the rules. Basically robbing royalty of any kind of sovereignty.
So that'd be,
sovereignty.
That'd be interesting if they explored that as a story plot.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that too much.
Because the second one, they had to. You remember the second one, right? Second National Treasure.
Good one, Conk.
What do you say?
National Treasure 3, Magna Carnage.
Oh God!
For our listeners,
Magna Carta. I mean, you remember the second one? What it was, right?
It was something with the temple, the Treasure of Solomon, or something.
Kind of, but it was more of the Aztec city of gold.
Right, which was El Dorado.
It was like that, yeah. So
it was handed down through generations
because they were going through
world.
They were going through a lot of like first there was the conspiracy that they threw in of like the president's secret book of like secrets, and then it tied into like there was the old like the desk in the Oval Office was tied to a desk in Buckingham Palace. So then they crossed into the UK. Right. And then they started crossing into like ancient, like, Central and I guess it'd be Central American, like Native American culture and stuff, which was like really, making it outside of the U.S. but still kind of connected to the U.S. And then now it's like, I don't know what they're going to do. I think
we'll see.
I think I told you once I had a very interesting dream where I was like in a national treasure kind of story, but it was regarding China.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So I had to like, good. So it was, I mean, it's a jumble. So, but like in the dream, you think it all makes sense. It was something along the lines of utilizing the Chinese lunar calendar to figure out like, so how the lunar calendar made these predictions, and because Chinese history is 5,000 years old, you had to like you couldn't use your typical like Magna Carta or Declaration of Independence. It had to be something more long term, and it was like some weird clue involving the moon.
Okay, interesting.
Not that you would go on the moon, but like kind of like the position of the moon and the moonlight reacting was something I forgot. It was such a weird dream. I was like, what? Like, national treasure, like maybe with the moon and the Great Wall or something, which would be interesting.
Right. Yeah, could be. They probably. But, did you just? Yeah,
I'm here.
Okay, yeah. No, it very well could be something along those lines, especially as Hollywood is trying so hardly to pander to China, is that one of their major audiences, especially Disney, which runs National Treasure as a franchise. Wouldn't be surprised if it involved the Great Wall and some form of Chinese culture. So let's see.
Right. But we're coming up in an hour here.
Yeah, good on you, man. Good on you.
Yeah, we were gonna quickly touch on our absolute favorite show we're watching, right?
What's that? Ragnarok?
No. Star Trek Picard. Come on.
Oh, right. I got so confused for a minute there. Star Trek Picard, episode 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amos, you start us off, man. What are you thinking of Star Trek Picard episode 5?
Well, first off, I actually found an article. I didn't read it, but it was like the Hollywood Reporter, and they said the one scene in Picard episode 5 that Gene Roddenberry would hate. And I was like, just that?
Just one scene?
You think he wouldn't hate the whole thing?
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah, it's oh man. I mean, again, just me with the member berries and the nostalgia. I'm kind of like moderately enjoying it, but like every time I message you about it, it's just, oh, it's another mediocre episode. Like even like Deep Space Nine and its most boring episodes, and because Deep Space Nine is a little more an acquired taste among the series.
Yeah.
Even their worst episode is better than a lot of these Picard episodes.
Probably. I'm still going through Deep Space Nine.
I mean, we joked about the, the village is strong,
That was a pretty fucking terrible episode.
That is still better than Picard.
Possibly. Yeah, I think that's
watching
probably
Chief
accurate.
O'Brien yelling at a cloud, is a little bit better than watching Picard getting yelled at by all the women in an episode.
Yeah.
Plus that whole episode, like, again, more member berries. There was that one guy, again, spoiler alert everyone. This one guy that was like, oh, you're so-and-so. Quark of Ferenginar spoke highly of you. Okay. Nice little member berries. That guy who played Bruce Maddox, I don't think he was the same actor from Next Generation.
I was actually going to check that. I didn't. I think you're right. I don't think it is.
Unless they just put so much beard and hair on him that he's unrecognizable. Plus, he's quite a bit older.
Yeah, he's a lot older in this scenario. I don't know. I'll have to double check that and see. I know that the actor for Hugh is the same. Mm-hmm. Most of the main characters are pretty much the same.
It sucks they still haven't had any of the still no other Next Generation characters popping up yet.
I think that's going to be next. I think they're going to go to whatever planet that whoever is on. Obviously, we know Riker and Troy make an appearance. Which is funny because, as I mentioned, I was watching The Orville and I saw the actress for Counselor Troy playing the teacher in one of the episodes with the kids. And I was like, oh, yeah, look at that. That's nostalgic. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It is lackluster. I'm not as big a fan as probably you are. So I will have no qualms confessing that I was practically falling asleep with these episodes.
Oh, and that's fine. Like, I mean, I'm not like... based just the way you and I are kind of going about it, like I hold out too much hope for it to go on.
Sure. I would like it to be good. Don't get me wrong. I do hope the series was at least enjoyable. I'm just more bored and I just don't care about any of this. And considering the whole thing kind of started off as a kind of a race against time, we've got to get to whatever the fuck her name. What's her name again? The other girl, what's her name?
Soji,
right? We got to get to Soji. But yet we've taken 2 whole episodes of completely pointless banter and detour. And we've kind of lost the urgency of whatever mission seems to be. I don't even know what the mission is. Just to get to this girl, wherever she is, we don't even know. And it's
well, to find Bruce Maddox, to find her. I know that they're trying to find him, to find her, and then that whole ending was really weird. Like, do you understand why did that one chick kill him?
We don't know. We don't know because she has information. She knows something. And again, it's wasting our time. So in the last episode, we had this whole side quest where we picked up, Lord Elrond from Rivendell, and then we bring him,
Oh,
right? We bring him along, and again, he has no fucking point in this episode. He's just filler. Some of the worst cringe was Picard acting like a French pirate cap, whatever that fuck he was doing with that. Absolute cringe. Absolutely worst acting I've ever seen in my life, where they're pretending to be these like war weapons salesmen or whatever it was. And again, Elrond no, it's not Elnor, right? I gotta remember they've switched the two letters. Elnor, useless. Like what is his fucking point in this whole thing? And even the 7 of 9 character, completely wasted. They just brought her back to suggest she's a lesbian. Oh wow, great.
Wait, what? Where did they do that?
Well, when she's talking to the woman that's holding the professor, she starts talking about, did she tell you how intimately close we used to be? I mean, they didn't spell it out, but they hell of a suggested it. And I was like,
yeah, the whole thing too, like where they killed. You remember Icheb from Voyager?
Yeah,
and they just briefly mention him, and he just gets freaking killed. What?
I know. It's like, what is the point? We have wasted. We are 5 episodes in. This is halfway into the series, and nothing has happened. The urgency. I don't care about Soji. Like, who gives a fuck? They have yet to explain the situation with the Romulan cube. They had a window of opportunity to do that 5 episodes in. They haven't. I don't care anymore. I'm tired of watching these women just berate Picard because he's an old white man. That seems to be the mantra, just lecture the old white man. I'm tired of it. I'm absolutely tired of it. And none of it, I'm not connected to anything. I don't think he's very Picard-like at all. I find he's a shell of a man. He had this brief moment where he picked up a sword to try and fight, and then he just throws it on the ground, and it's kind of like, I'm lost. You could call this show anything. You could call this show, wipe my ass cheek with a porcupine, and it's just not Star Trek. There's no hope.
Yeah.
There's nothing of Gene Roddenberry's vision in this at all, except for the member berries.
And a lot of the member berries don't even really, yeah.
They don't matter. They really don't matter.
I mean, people don't realize, what is it? Roddenberry was only involved in Next Generation for like half the show.
Yeah, before he died.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm starting to kind of understand your view, which is just wait till it's completely done, watch it all in a sitting, and be done with it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't mind it. It's something to do. I do have.
They're already renewed for season 2. It's already renewed for season 2.
Oh well.
I mean, like, Discovery just doesn't interest me. And we've talked about Discovery never really interested me, and a big part is because there's no it doesn't tie into anything.
Agreed.
They're trying to tie it to the original series, but I wasn't really into that to begin with, but it's barely. Like, it's just Spock is about it.
Yeah. And Christopher Pike.
Yeah, he was kind of there, but then it ties. Yeah, that's it. Picard at least ties into Next Generation and everything else, so I can kind of go and like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's nice. So I'm probably gonna, like I said, I wanted to give it the season. If it doesn't rise above a certain level of quality or just interest that it can get out of me by the end of the show, unless there's some really crazy space battle or something where they actually accomplish something by the end of the show, even if it's just like a little bit, something a little more concrete, I probably am not going to watch season 2 until that one's just done, and then just watch it all. Like, I want to keep up. I want to definitely be informed and like, okay, is it going to be at least a little bit substantial that like it can be considered, that I can go and say, okay, it kind of sucks. The story is a little bit, kind of spotty, but they had little things here and there that definitely kind of rewarded the viewer, and I'll consider it canon.
Right.
If I'm talking to someone like, when Picard, Picard was fucking around the whole season except for here. Then everything else, I'll say, counts.
Yeah. I mean, if there is a legitimate hero's journey, okay, I'm not seeing evidence of that because so far there hasn't been any real challenge or growth to Picard at all. It doesn't seem like he's doing anything really. Everybody else is doing all the work, so I don't understand this dynamic at all. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you watched the new series.
Well, that's just the CGI and the cinematography, really.
Yeah, it's this kind of dark dystopian future type.
Everyone's fucking doing that.
Correct. And I don't mind if everybody's doing that on an original show. Like if you are making your own type of space opera,
because
don't call it Star Trek.
Justice League was doing that. Well, it all started pretty much with Batman. Batman had that kind of like the dark gritty
Knight. Yeah,
the darker gritty sort of real life hero, and then they kind of, Marvel kind of adopted small bits of that without sacrificing the overall quality.
Yes.
The DCEU was doing that. Just any real superhero movie was just trying to be more gritty, even with all the superpowers. And then, Star Trek Discovery is doing it, and now Picard is kind of doing it. Like, you don't have, not campy, but like Next Generation, Voyager, and DS9 have a feel to it that is like it's the future. You can see it, but there's like a sense of I guess, I don't know what the word is, like safety when you watch it. You feel safe watching it. You don't feel like they look out into space and they're not freaking out with like existential dread of just the void of space.
Sure.
They're like, space, the final frontier. Whereas it's like if I'm watching Picard, I'm watching space. It's like space is cold and dark and death. I'm like, wow. I mean, we know
the universe is a tough place, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's like, this is the Federation.
Well, it was. I don't know what happened.
Well, that's what I don't get too. Like, because most of the planets that they were going to were all within the Federation.
Yeah.
But people are just randomly shooting at each other, blowing each other up in space as if there's like no starships around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand any of this. When the invasion was 14 years ago, when they blew up the manufacturing facility on Mars or whatever, you're telling me Starfleet has not replenished, especially in a world where there's no money, apparently. Why haven't they just replenished the fleet after 14 years? You guys should be on top of things. But what they're trying to suggest is that they've gone xenophobic and kind of closed the borders and turned inwards, which makes no sense. That's the complete antithesis of Star Trek, which is about trekking through the stars. It's about looking outwards. So
they've never had a xenophobic phase like ever.
It is the complete antithesis of what the story is supposed to be about.
The worst of the Federation was ignorance. It was never xenophobia.
No, exactly. So I mean, they haven't said that. Obviously, we don't know what the state of the Federation is. But there seems to be like lawlessness and stuff. They talk about the neutral zone collapsing and, all this types of thing. The Rangers are trying to keep order. So they're trying to imply it, but not actually
the Rangers are basically what? The Maquis of the neutral zone.
I imagine so.
That's about it. How far are you in Deep Space Nine? Are you still at least a little interested?
I'm on season 2. I think maybe the first or second episode. It is dragging again. I'm which is why I switched to the Orville. It's like, I need something fun.
I think it's dragging because you watch Picard, then you watch DS9.
Yeah, I watched Picard.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, God damn it, Then I said, okay, well, let me switch back to, at least classical ideas of Star Trek. And I went to Deep Space Nine, and I'm on season 2. And again, there's some story with the kids, and, I can't remember what it was.
The school?
Yeah, something with the school. I honestly I don't care about the kids. So
Yeah,
when I
so
see
I
kid
mean,
episodes, I tend to skip them.
yeah, there's this whole thing about yeah, there's that the Vedic, basically kind of like a religious figure within the Bajorans. Like she
Right.
has this
They're
whole
teaching
problem.
blasphemy in the
Yeah, because they
school.
talk about the wormhole, and she's like, "You mean because it's
Is created by the whatever the
by the gods,
ancestors
the
or the
prophets?"
gods or yeah.
So there's this whole thing with it because it all ties in because you're gonna get those little arcs of the Bajorans and their problems because it's a station that's based there. So
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
yeah,
But I mean, it's been done so many times. I'm kind of getting tired of it. Even in the Orville, they've had a couple run-ins with the same type of thing, and even but at least it was campy. At least it was funny
wait
what they
till
were
the war
doing.
starts.
Right. I guess in Deep Space Nine, but that's like season 3 or 4, isn't it?
You get hints of it at the end of season 2.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give it at least season 2. I'm gonna try and
There's
get
the
through it and
war.
see.
There's the war. There's also deal like the piece of the Klingons kind of shaky, so you get some Klingon stuff. You get some
Right.
other stuff. There's a lot of other things too, like you learn more about Odo's past.
Who's Odo?
The security chief, the guy who can
Oh, right.
shapeshift.
Yeah.
So you learn a little bit about him because he has a really interesting story that ties into everything. Like, who is he really? Why did he come from an area near that wormhole?
Right.
Did he come? Maybe he came from the Delta Quadrant, stuff like that.
I
Not
think
Delta, Gamma.
what it's missing is tits. I think that's a very big problem. Why I'm not interested in Deep Space Nine because
It does come towards the end of season 2.
right, because Star Trek at least had Diana Troy in a short skirt and big bazookas. Voyager had 7 of 9 by the 2nd or 3rd season, and that's when I really got interested. Deep Space Nine doesn't have tits. Even the Star Trek original had girls in miniskirts.
You know who's considered the most attractive character on Deep Space Nine?
No, I don't know.
Dax.
That's the parasite thing, right?
Yeah, Trill. So she's
right
because she's always wearing her science uniform. You don't get to see.
You don't see any legs or tits.
Not yet.
Right, and it's not to say 7 of 9 didn't have it, but her tits were so huge you couldn't hide that shit behind a whale. So, we don't. So far, I don't see. There's no even in the Orville. The first officer is basically what hooked me to the show. It's like, oh damn, this girl's pretty hot. So.
Oh yeah,
I do realize how shallow. Yeah, I know how shallow I am, and basically, the Deep Space Nine better start showing me some tits and ass. Otherwise, I'm not going to keep watching it. Which is probably why I'm struggling with Picard and Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, 7 of 9 just went completely.
They covered her up. They put her, gave her like a jacket, and like fucking hell, man.
There's literally no women even remotely like meant to draw your gaze at all. They've completely gone away from that. Like,
I mean, and Michael Burnham is basically a man in Discovery, so it's definitely not happening. Even the blonde chick is too ditzy. The Raffi is too old. I mean, there's no sex appeal. None, and that's not helping.
The only sex appeal is for women, and that's the dude.
Which
captain.
Dude is that?
The captain.
Who's that? The captain. Yeah, I guess.
He's got the different accents. He speaks a little Spanish. Ooh,
Yeah, a little bit of a bad boy. Yeah, that's probably it because there's no sex appeal for me. The future's looking pretty boring. That probably has a lot to do with it.
Let's see. No Gates McFadden yet.
No, I don't think
Crusher. So. Troy's going to be old.
Troy is going to be old
when we see her.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I think Riker's going to just be pretty much cucked for the show?
You did mention this, that you think he's basically
he's going to appear. Yeah, he's going to be like, the reformed bad boy, like, because he was always the ladies' man, and well, now he's married, and Troy's probably got him on a bit of a, he's probably going to say something or at least hint at some sort of happy wife, happy life nonsense.
Yeah, probably. Or he might say something interesting like, I wish I was going out there with you kind of thing. That might be kind of cool.
Yeah, but then he's not going to go out with him.
No, he's not. No,
yeah, he's not. I've been whipped by my wife.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. Halfway through and nothing has happened. And I mean, you look at space operas. I don't know if you watch Firefly, for instance. Right, Firefly, it was brilliant television, right? But it's the same kind of thing. It's a space opera. You build your team, you get everybody put together and stuff like that. The whole thing was kind of put together in 2 episodes. Probably 1 episode. You kind of get the whole team together in 1 episode because you want to get on with the story and you want to start building your relationships between these people so that you care about the characters. But because they've drawn it out in Picard over 3, 4, 5 episodes, there is no time. Well, first of all, nothing is going on except, just crazy nonsense. But there's no interaction between any of the characters that you care about them. Right? They're trying to put all this information in and they're trying to build this arc and stuff, and they're not doing it successfully. But we don't know anything about these people, and far less we don't care about any of these people. I don't know. It's very weak and very poor writing as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
Well said. Well said. I don't know what I'm going to watch now. There's nothing good on TV anymore.
Maybe you got to get into some anime like I do.
I haven't watched anime in a while. What are you watching?
So I'm watching this one. I told you about this one, My Hero Academia.
You mentioned it, yeah.
So it's kind of it's about a world where people are now 80% of the population are born with what they call quirks, which is powers. And so the world has basically, as people are born doing this, pretty soon there was a split between heroes and villains. Mm-hmm. And so you're following this kid who basically becomes the greatest hero in the world.
Okay.
The way,
eventually, okay.
Yeah, the story is being portrayed in like almost like the beginning and the end of each episode. There's like a narration, and you can kind of tell like it's the main character basically saying, my name is this, and I'm in the world where like 80% of the population has these develops abilities called quirks, and he goes, and pretty soon heroes and villains start to form, and organizations came in place to basically work with both of them. And he goes, and this is how I went to my time at UA. UA is this high school, like the number one hero high school in the country. It's in Japan, of course. And he's like, and he said, and this is how I became the greatest hero in the world. Right. So throughout this show, so they're on season 4 right now. They're about to come out with their second movie. But it basically follows him and how he like interacts, has friends, obviously makes friends. Learns about people with different abilities, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff because you can see like the creator went through a lot of stuff to like balancing out and creating and seeing these people sort of develop their powers, because like abilities they start to kind of point out like, okay, their quirks are not just like when you see in superhero movies, people's powers are pretty straightforward and they just use them. Whereas in this show, the way it is, because so many people have powers, well, it doesn't make sense that people just use them. Like there's people that will have like, there's also skill involved. There's development involved. Right. So it's not just like, I can fly, therefore that's it.
Right.
It's, I can fly, but then I start to learn how to use my ability to fly. There's like characters that can like phase through a wall. Well, it's not just phasing through a wall and that's it. There's like characters that use that in like special ways, and the creator goes through a lot to like make very mundane abilities become very powerful through skill.
Right. You
don't really have that in superhero movies that we see. Like it's just straight powers.
Sure.
The only person that's really like the reason Batman is such a good superhero is because he has skill.
Sure.
What about all his Justice League friends? Not really. It's just powers.
Yeah, I understand the premise. I mean, it's not entirely because Barry Allen, for instance, he is a forensic scientist and stuff like that.
Right, but I mean, in terms of his powers, though.
Well, yeah, it helps him solve crimes. I mean, the speed.
But he's fast.
Yes, that is his primary. That is his primary.
Does he do anything? Okay, so he learned. There's even, or let's say Superman.
Mm-hmm. No,
Superman is strong.
That's not.
Superman is strong because Superman is strong. Like Superman has no, he's bulletproof, so he doesn't have to learn how to dodge bullets. He could if he wanted to, but he doesn't have to. He can fly. Does he need to learn how to fly a certain way to fly better? Not really. Does he have to, so he learns a little bit about how to use his laser vision better. Mm-hmm. There's little bits of that, but it's more about the might rather than the skill. Whereas in this show, they really focus on showing how the skill can play a larger role than people think. So anyways, there's 4 seasons of it. People that I've pointed out to watch it, they've liked it because it's got a lot more plot development. It's more compelling that way. It's not just it's not your run of the mill superhero, just superpowers.
Is there tits and ass?
Yes.
Okay.
It's anime, of course.
Then I'll check it out. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Then I'll check it out. It's on Netflix.
No. I will have to talk off air to see if there's other ways you can find it.
I'll see. They might have it on Netflix in the UK. I'll check it out and stuff. But yeah, that's all right.
Anything else we got to touch on? I mean, I'm surprised. It's 2020 and we're not talking about the election that much.
There's nothing to talk about. I mean, we did do a number on Bernie Sanders and Buttigieg and what's his name?
Yeah.
Bloomberg.
But it's not dominating our show just yet.
Not yet.
Remember, we started this show pretty much because of 2016, I'd say, right?
Pretty much. And it looks like it's pretty much going to be a repeat of 2016. So there's not much to add. There's no dark horse oh my God, we didn't see that guy coming out from the left field,
Who would you have wanted to win if you had to choose someone on the left?
On the left?
Both. Yeah. And I'm including candidates that are no longer running.
I would say, oops, looks like we've lost you, bro. Yeah. Well, if I were to answer that question for the listeners and the viewers, it probably would have been John F. Kennedy, only because he was such a cool guy, and of course he slept with Marilyn Monroe. But nonetheless, I don't know if we're going to get Amos back. We're coming up on time here, so I'm just going to close out the show. So thank you everyone for joining us and for watching. Be sure to check us out with all the links below to all our social media and all of these other sites. As well as, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're watching us live. Give us a like if you can. Recommend us, share us out to friends and family. Those are people who might be interested in listening to our content. We really are trying to get more people to tune into that. Also, check out the subscribe star that we've got listed below if you're considering, maybe making a financial contribution towards the show. Amos and I are really putting a lot of work into this every week. We try to make it as entertaining as possible, and we would really appreciate your support. It doesn't look like we're getting Amos back. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. We'll hopefully see you all next week. Take care.